Now, you are here today to talk about Level Path, elevating procurement, how Emerald streamlined operations for clarity and simplicity. And I'm really excited to hear from our two speakers today. So first up, we have Zach Margolis, IT Operations Analyst from Emerald, and with him will be Mari Carmichael, Head of Solutions Consulting at Level Path. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about the two of them. Zach serves as an IT operations analyst at Emerald, where he manages IT contract renewals, administrates company software plans, and oversees vendor invoicing for the IT department. His first position out of college was at an immigration law firm in Charlotte. Oh, you might be very interesting to talk to about what you're thinking these days in North Carolina. And at this point in his career, he has garnered over 5 years of experience working in for not-for-profit and nonprofit settings in a multinational capacity. He has a knack for making sense of intricate data and a passion for problem solving. He also is currently a resident of Boston, but he's soliciting food and neighborhood recommendations for a move to San Diego. With him is Mari Carmichael, Head of Solutions Consulting at Level Path. Mari serves as a head of Solutions Consulting at Level Path, but she also directs the vision and execution of customer experience across the entire customer lifecycle. Prior to joining Level Path, she focused on strategic partnerships at Workday and a customer success at Scout RFP. Now, Mari's career in fintech began with working with leading asset management firms worldwide in a number of client-facing roles. She's a graduate of Boston University with a degree in finance, but she is now living in San Francisco. So with that, I invite them both to come on. I'm so excited to have you both with us today. And so, Mari, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn. All right, here we go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us. We love presenting at these SIG events and sharing the story of Level Path with all of you. So for the agenda for today's session, we'll definitely go through those quick intros, and my role here is to give you a background on Level Path and how we got here today. And really the star of the show is going to be Zach, hearing directly from one of our customers who has brought on this Level Path tool and how it has transformed their day-to-day operations and their overall business. So really excited for you all to hear directly from Zach. And we're here for all of your Q&A, so don't be shy. All right, so I want to start with a little bit of background on how Level Path came to be. And this really goes back to our co-founders, Stan and Alex, all the way back to 2014, where they started a company called Scout RFP. This is a dedicated point solution, and the tagline for Scout was painless RFPs. One of the challenges that we heard in the field, and Scout is where I met Stan and Alex as well, is people just had all these different tools that were really clunky. And so we really wanted to focus on the user experience. How do we execute more sourcing events and ultimately drive savings for our enterprises? And then working through the journey there, Scout ended up getting acquired by Workday in 2019. And this is where Stan and Alex spent the next few years overseeing the entire spend management side of the Workday business. Now, coming from Scout, it was interesting for us because we went from a company of around 200 employees where buying things and getting help was really easy. I could go tap someone on the shoulder. I knew who to reach out to. And in Workday, it became really difficult. Workday is a company of over 16,000 employees. And so this is where we kind of went through the pain that led to Level Path here. So in 2022, Stan and Alex left Workday to start Level Path after realizing that the buying process at large enterprises is still so complex. And taking the past experience with focusing on a really easy, intuitive user experience, how can we bring that vision to life in a much bigger and broader way? So if we think about this process here, buying is more complicated than ever. We look at our stakeholder on the left-hand side, and there's just kind of this big cliff, this drop off to ultimately being able to get those goods and services that they are looking for. And the reason, I'm sure, as we all know, is for a multitude of items, whether it's the number of decision makers that need to be involved, the amount of risk that we're trying to protect our businesses from. We think about what's going on in the news today with tariffs. There's so many factors that all of our teams are trying to balance while ultimately delivering a good experience to your customers, the business stakeholders. Oftentimes with tools, though, we are operating in a number of different areas, a number of different silos. There's lots of communication that's really manual. And so the process leads to ultimately a mess, as you can see here on the screen. And what does that impact the business look like? Ultimately, we have stakeholders who are frustrated, which is, our primary customer that we are working with. So we want to make sure that we can have a great experience for them. Also leading to increased costs when things are not following the right process, things are happening out of order. We want to make sure we can drive compliance. And ultimately, we are losing that visibility and the controls and making sure that we are ultimately protecting the business and giving everyone a good experience. So with LevelPath, our mission is to make procurement delightful. Now, this might sound like an oxymoron. These are our co-founders, Stan and Alex, on the screen here. This is our neon sign in the office. So if you're ever in San Francisco, come on by. We love taking photos with it. But this is where we want to change the perception for everyone. We want to bring a delightful experience not only to you all, the power users who are in these tools every single day, but to your stakeholders as well as your suppliers. Everyone who's involved in the process along the way, want to make sure that we bring that level of delight across the board. So with that, we have our unique approach on how we bring delight, and this comes down to a few core principles here at LevelPath. The first is the power of simplicity. We want to make sure that as you roll out a new tool, especially to your enterprise, that there's no training needed. When we think about going on our phones and maybe ordering an Uber or getting some food delivered, there's no training that has to happen on any of those apps. We just go on. We know how it works just because it's so intuitive, and we want to bring that type of experience over to enterprise software as well. The second is our end-to-end suite. So we've taken a platform approach from the very beginning. If we think about Scout back in 2014, there were a lot of point solutions that were dedicated to solving one type of challenge. And then over time, as we tried to grow, the architecture just didn't lend itself to having a smooth data flow and experience across the board. So with LevelPath, we've taken a step back. We spent the first year of our time actually building that platform architecture to now bring and deliver that elevated experience, making sure all of your data flows across the tool seamlessly, no matter who you are, what team you're on, or who you're engaging with. And finally, white glove service. Here at LevelPath, our number one value is to obsess over our customers, and we do that by offering a white glove service package, partnering with customers along their journey, not just through implementation, but even post go live and post launch, making sure that we're constantly working and partnering together and making you all successful. So what does the platform look like today? At the very bottom, we are looking at the LevelPath platform. So that is where I was talking through spending the time to really build a whole platform to support all the applications that we layer on top. Next, we have our orchestration, because we know that different teams are operating in different tools, and we want to meet those users where they're at. So being able to connect LevelPath to the tools you use today. Next, we have our hyperbridge layer, which is really just a fancy way of saying this is LevelPath's AI. And how we're doing this differently is we've integrated AI into that platform layer. Now, what this means for you all is we can take the best of the best in terms of AI technology and make sure we're being really thoughtful of how we are applying that AI throughout the platform. So we don't just want to slap a chatbot on something. We want to make sure we are really delivering the value and making your experience not only more streamlined, but helping you work smarter, not harder. So we do this in a number of ways. We use multiple different technologies, and we have the ability to swap them in and out. As we know, this industry is moving so quickly, and there's constantly new things that are becoming available, and we are not tied down to any specific technology, bringing all the value to you all. And finally, at the very top, we have our core platform. So the LevelPath platform today is a front door experience for your stakeholders, ultimately guiding them to information, to other catalogs you might already have today, or an intake form to engage with your team, and then supporting the full source to contract portion of the life cycle. Now you see a little bit of empty space on the right-hand side. We are not slowing down, even though we have only started in 2022. So we are going to continue to build out more applications to support the supplier overall management life cycle, as well as over into P2P. But that's LevelPath as it stands today. And now super excited to hand it over to Zach to walk through his experience on LevelPath.
Thank you very much, Mari, and thank you, Dawn, for the introduction. I just firstly want to say thank you to the whole LevelPath and SIG team for the opportunity to speak today. And more specifically, I'd like to thank Colette Sobchak-Hudson, Libby Sestak, and PJ Iannone, who are our direct solutions consultant and support team. They have been instrumental in our rollouts for many of the tools that we're using within LevelPath. So to start, I'd love to highlight Emerald's background and business. Emerald's a business-to-business trade show operator in the US and now internationally. So we offer different platforms and meeting spaces. Some of those, like Stan and Alex, met the first Emerald figures and got related to our company at Pizza Expo or PizzaCon in, I believe, 2008, 2009. And since then, Emerald has continued to grow. So now we have a fairly extensive portfolio of events and media properties. But not only that, our goal is to connect people through content, connections, and commerce. So we also have businesses and brands such as Elastic Suite that use digital merchandising tools and AI. In addition to that, Emerald is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion factors. Our CEO, Hervé Sedke, is going to be giving a virtual talk with a company, Inclusivity, in the next 2 days. And I would highly recommend attending if you'd like to hear more from him on the subject. Additionally, we have made several strategic partnerships and acquisitions throughout the years. More recently, we have expanded our employee base to the UK, having acquired InsurTech Insights, and this is beyond limited, soon pending regulatory approval. So InsurTech, one of our newest acquisitions, is sort of a bet on hedging against the uncertainty of the future. I'm sure everyone here on this call has experienced price increases across the board, from bananas to bolts to batteries, depending on what business you're in. And the only certainty is that there's going to be uncertainty moving forward. So InsurTech is a business that provides trade shows for the insurance industry, as well as provides AI insights into trends in insurance at large globally. So that's something that we wanted to hedge against in the future, and sort of step forward into a new era for Emerald as well. And then This Is Beyond is going to be focused on the luxury travel and consumer markets. So there will be conferences in Bali, New York, London, Hong Kong, and more to come. So whenever I was first brought on with Emerald, LevelPath has been being used at Emerald since March of this past year. I was brought on in July. So one of the challenges that we wanted to look at was how our current processes internally work for purchasing. And one of the things that we found was that multiple departments had multiple different ways of completing their purchases, renewals, and storing their agreements. So there was a wide amount of fragmentation across the company at large. You may find something in SharePoint between Adobe Sign and DocuSign. And the national mood right now is one of tightening budgets and trimming down. So my whole job coming in is to analyze and see where we can reduce any excess spend or excess shelfware that's not being used. So additionally, we wanted to make contract retrieval easy for all of our employees across the user base, as many folks in different departments had these things segmented or siloed off. Additionally, our security team for tech agreements needs to be able to complete questionnaires with our vendors on a yearly, bi, or tri-yearly basis, depending on the type of information they're handling. So again, the storage of that information needs to be in one exact locale for us to access. And then finally, all of this fragmentation and lack of centralized storage led to, I would say, suboptimal renewal discussions with our vendors, where maybe one person who's departed had the relationship and the information and the contacts, so then we're coming in fresh with a new face. There's no relationship built, so we're not able to effectively leverage our relationship to that vendor. And so then enters LevelPath. Whenever we first started looking for a solution, we wanted to make sure it was easy to use. So Emerald has around 730 employees in the US, more in the UK now, I believe, up to about 900. And there's varying levels of technical sophistication that occur across that user base. You're going to have seasoned industry experts and fresh out of college graduates. So we wanted to make sure that anyone coming into a platform would be able to use it with minimal questions and training. Additionally, we're based all over the US and the world now, so being able to work across time zones is incredibly helpful and avoiding delays in communication. Lastly, we wanted to take a, I would say, somewhat cautious approach to AI, and that's something that we really appreciated with LevelPath, is that there's no smoke and mirrors with how AI is being sold here. It's tools that are incredibly useful for our day-to-day, and I'll highlight those a bit later in this presentation. That's something that impressed us, however. And then in order to get the bulk of our contracts uploaded for tracking, LevelPath was incredibly helpful for that as well. So at the beginning of onboarding, they were able to upload around 500 different documents, which we have since tagged, cataloged, and sorted across our various departments. And then we've segmented those permissions so only people within those departments are able to view specific agreements. However, other teams like legal or finance will have a larger branch across all of the documents within the repository. So one of the other benefits with LevelPath is tracking company-wide spend as well as communication with our vendors. So Emerald has a approval process where it's segmented by dollar value. So Chief Procurement Officer approves above $25,000. The CFO approves above 50. Anything below 25 goes to the SVP or a lower level manager. So we wanted to make sure that the tool that we were utilizing would be able to track all of those approvals and obtain them easily without having to communicate separately by email or another type of messaging platform. So since you've been using LevelPath, the procurement cycles have been incredibly quick and incredibly sophisticated. So we've had very little in the way of problems from our users. I hold bi-weekly office hours, and most people are incredibly pleased whenever they've begun to use the platform. However, we have done this in a segmented rollout. So we rolled this out to our primary corporate employees at Emerald so far, and then are slowly integrating our other brands. So one of the benefits that I would want to highlight is that our contract that I mentioned here that had $60,000 in savings on just one renewal. I, in no small part, attribute that to LevelPath because we were able to effectively track our termination and renewal periods and leverage that to negotiate in a solid enough amount of time to be able to garner those savings. Additionally, with LevelPath, whenever you upload an agreement, you're able to track and highlight certain features within the document. So those enhanced governance and compliance abilities are there where you can search within the document for specific phrases or clauses. Some vendors are going to have a very specific clause where they say that you only have 30 days to provide them notice to renew, or 45 days for making any changes to the agreement, and those are going to be tracked separately. So being able to use LevelPath to track that information has been incredibly useful. Lastly, our procurement and IT teams before this were pretty heavily leveraged across the company and had multiple different things on their plates. So LevelPath has saved us quite a bit of time in being able to use and track all of those various processes. Right now, we've rolled this out to a few of our brands, including MJ Biz, which is a cannabis trade show company, and then our ASD Marketing Week. So those time savings across multiple brands has been incredibly helpful. Lastly, the executive reporting has been equally beneficial. One of the things that we've utilized is we have several workflows that fall within SOX compliance, and LevelPath was more than helpful, or more than willing to help us document all of the information we needed to report to auditors at the end of the year, providing us SOC documentation, as well as providing summaries and meeting notes, which we were able to use for our auditors. So making sure that we're remaining strong federally and state compliant has been very beneficial. Lastly, the centralized communication logs within LevelPath have been instrumental for us being able to communicate effectively during renewal periods. So typically you're communicating by Outlook or any other type of format like Zoom, and sometimes there's gaps in communication there if there's no summaries provided or if you're not able to join one meeting while other team members are. With the centralized communication log, we're able to find the exact notes from all of our team members who are working on those purchases and renewals. And we're able to pick up effectively where they left off, if they're on vacation, if they're out, or if we just want to find more information on the renewal. And then to summarize in full, we've been able to standardize a lot of our procurement processes at this point. So where our teams before were using 1 or 2 tools or 3 to 4 for their different processes and storage, LevelPath has been helpful in centralizing all of those procurement processes across our departments. We've been able to use the DocuSign integration very successfully as well to prevent further fragmentation of documentation. And lastly, our executive team has been very pleased to be able to see our consistent reports that we're able to generate both on usage as well as value tracking. So some of the AI tools that we've really benefited from have been the executive summaries. So for example, if I'm trying to reach out to the chief procurement officer or chief financial officer, they have a million different things that they're working on throughout the day and 500 emails at any time in their inbox. So we needed to be able to cut through that and reach them whenever we have time-sensitive deals on the table. So through LevelPath's Copilot AI, we've been able to summarize all of our deals after uploading our agreements and notes into the platform. And then that's been able to generate a basic summary for our CFO. So whenever he's reviewing, he gets the exact details of the deal down and he's able to approve faster. Whereas before, I or other members of the procurement team were writing up manual summaries, which can take extra time as well as getting lost in email or Teams. So being able to have that limited to one specific platform has been incredibly beneficial and time-saving. And then in the IT department where I work, one of the big things with technology agreements, again, are those notice periods, terminations, renewals, and various other challenges that occur with renewals and purchases. So we had some surprise periods come up before LevelPath was being fully utilized. So, locked into another year's contract with a tool that maybe you weren't as interested in using. And afterwards, whenever we've been able to track those renewals as well as the termination periods, we've been able to effectively leverage our relationship to the vendor and negotiate better terms as well as payment once we avoid having that automatic renewal occur. Additionally, being able to update our contacts has been very useful for getting communication down. Just like any company, there's going to be turnover. So being able to lose a contact that maybe you've worked with for a few years and then reconnect with a new one immediately has been very useful for us to have and store. So that comes to what we're planning with LevelPath moving forward. So right now, our people and culture or our HR team has been very interested in utilizing the LevelPath for new job tracking and approvals. So as I mentioned, our customer success and support team, Colette Sobchak-Hudson and Libby Sestak, have been incredibly helpful in designing that workflow for us. So the new job workflow has a list of approvals across the business, depending on the department they're in. We're able to get those approvals very, very quickly, upload an intake form where we answer all the questions where our people and culture officer will be able to review and kick back any questions to the manager who's hiring. And then for our finance team, for example, there is an interest in getting a new form uploaded for merit increases and tracking. So we're working with them in meetings to make sure that that's logged, and we'll start a brand new workflow within the design process with LevelPath. Additionally, several of our brands have specific agreements. So a barter agreement, for example, where there's not exactly a full payment for services, but services are exchanged, and so it essentially zeroes out. That has a different type of approval process and a standard technology agreement based on our delegation of approval. So thankfully, Libby and Colette have been able to sit in on calls with us to discuss and go over that information, review the contracts, and try to find what would be best for our intake forms for that process. And then our CFO has been incredibly interested in utilizing the value tracking features with LevelPath. So as most businesses, you have a separate budget, likely in an Excel spreadsheet that you're utilizing to track different details throughout the year. My boss uses one for our departments and our sub-departments to be able to track our vendors and the change in each of the contracts. So being able to use LevelPath for value tracking and have more of a clear delineation rather than a detailed, complex spreadsheet has been very useful whenever we've been able to compare and provide numbers to our CFO and additional finance figures. And then another thing that's been beneficial for us has been using the contract upload features. So I'd like to highlight what that looks like for us on our Pathfinder, which is the main screen that our users log into whenever they log into LevelPath. So every time they log in, the Pathfinder screen shows up, and this is exactly what they see. So for us, we have several different features that have been useful across the company. This application links tab, for example, links to our intranet. So there's several different details where you'll be able to track events that are occurring, as well as just reach out and find information on, say, like a holiday calendar, different information for the company that you may need, benefits plans. Our travel and expense tab links to SAP Concur, which is our expense tool. So being able to effectively utilize that if you're traveling for a conference, but are, for example, using LevelPath and don't have the tools to get there right away. Additionally, at Emerald, there are several templates and forms we have in place for vendor onboarding. So we wanted to add those to a specific tab as well. So whenever we need to onboard a independent contractor, for example, we have the template stored here, and we have the request stored here, making it simple and easy to utilize for any number of people across teams or technical sophistication levels. Then we also have our Make a Purchase button where you can do a renewal or a brand new purchase. Our intake form so far is able to delineate between technology vendors as well as non-tech vendors. And then that will determine whether or not an approval is needed from our security assessment team. So that's very effective in being able to track security assessments and make sure the documentation is loaded in. And then additionally, we have our new job requisition. Again, I would say this is one of the workflows I'm most proud of because it gets utilized across the company very, very heavily, where we're able to track all of the approvals, documentation, and other details around jobs that are needed. So we have offices in New York, San Juan Capistrano in California, and Alpharetta in Georgia now. So we've been able to hire several employees across the US in those offices through this workflow. And then lastly, we have our preferred suppliers and updated supplier information tabs. So with preferred suppliers at Emerald, there's some that we've utilized for many, many years that we have very good relationships with. We want to make sure that we're continually utilizing them if different brands are going to be needing different tools. So we have those listed and are able to be accessed if they're trying to get a new contract purchased. Additionally, we have the update supplier information tabs. We use separate ERP to connect to our invoicing software and updates all of our account payable information. So whenever we update this tab, we have our contacts changed, we upload banking forms, and we make sure all of those details transition over to that ERP software. So essentially, LevelPath is a one-stop shop for us for what we want to use, and we're only expanding that further. Now I'd like to talk about what vendor negotiations have been like, not only through utilizing LevelPath, but sort of what I see as those best practices are. So the single repository with restricted permissions has been incredibly beneficial for our users and our executives for tracking those documentation. So I have any number of employees reaching out to me across the compliance, people and culture teams who need to be able to access a specific document, but we don't want them to see the full repository of documentation. If there's like a settlement agreement with the legal team, or if there's another type of complex financial document that is supposed to be secure and not viewed by the full employee base. So level path's restricted permissions have been very helpful for us to track and avoid having those mistakes occur. Additionally, the renewal timeline feature and pricing history between related agreements has been beneficial. So in Level Path, there's a feature called the Related Contracts tab that lets you link, say, a master services agreement to a new statement of work or a new renewal. At Emerald, we have several vendors who we have 7, 8, 10 different statements of work with that update each year, but we're able to link them back to a master service agreement that, say, was signed in 2022, 2020. Additionally, what I try to do with each of our renewals and purchases is utilize our employee base. Because ultimately you can cut costs, but how much is that going to upset your users if they're happy with the tools that they're using? So we've been able to use surveys internally, as well as just reaching out to key users such as admins to see what they can find on reports for the different vendors we're using. And that helps us make an ultimate decision on what we're going to purchase or continue with. Lastly, the point that I would want to highlight on centralized contract management is being able to find those clauses that can ultimately derail a renewal or help you in vendor negotiations. So Level Path's highlighting of that information has been very, very helpful for us. The leveraging of historical data is something that I don't think I can speak highly to enough. There are several vendors we have 10+ year relationships with, and there have been figures at Emerald who have left, but we still have some of those contacts. So we want to make sure that we're tracking documentation as well as communication and different details for each of those vendors. That prior history also helps us with negotiating better rates and custom plans. One of the things that I had someone mention to me in my personal life was she didn't think that she had the audacity to ask for something. But in vendor relationships, whenever you're asking for something beneficial on your terms, I think you have to have the audacity to do that. And if you have a good relationship, you can effectively leverage that to benefit you. Additionally, the visibility into all of those interactions through the comms logs is another key detail. Say if I'm going out on vacation or my chief procurement officer has been reviewing something while I've been out, and we need to track that information. And then finally, aligning your procurement with business goals. So vendors that align with your strategic objectives. So the IT team at Emerald had a executive change last year, and so those priorities changed. And several of our vendors reached out to us, but some of them didn't. So we wanted to make sure we were able to level set expectations with them for what we're going forward, whether that's changing agreement terms like 1 year, 2 year, if you're trying to cut down, or removing those renewal clauses so you are able to avoid those automatic renewals from occurring. It's been helpful for us to establish those expectations with the vendors and make sure that they understand what we're looking for as a company. Because ultimately, we also don't want to overburden them with reaching out consistently and being a problem user for their platform or tools. And then one thing that I do each quarter is regularly evaluate our vendor impact at our company as well as efficiency. So there are problems that you can spot with vendors early on where if I'm an admin for several of our different tools, if I'm noticing more and more tickets popping up or customer service issues, I tend to try to look at our contracts as well as reach out and see why those are occurring. And that's been helpful for me in understanding, okay, is this a risky vendor to continue with, and should we be considering alternatives at this time? And then lastly, again, as I mentioned, it shouldn't be treated purely as a cost-cutting exercise. We want to make sure that our employee base is happy, but also that our vendors aren't upset with us consistently. Because ultimately what this business comes down to is it's a business of relationships, and the difference between a 20% discount and no discount might just be, I don't like the way that person talks to me whenever we have our meetings. So we try to maintain consistent communication with them, as well as maintaining a level of transparency and open communication during those contacts. Notice I say a level of transparency because you don't want to provide every goal that the company or department is operating with. You want to make sure that those shared goals are fostered and grown while also not revealing everything if you're, say, planning to switch to a different platform in 2 years at the end of a term. And then Additionally, contract linking in LevelPath is something that's been very useful for my compliance team, being able to review prior year agreements as well as looking at the approvals that have been tracked. And additionally, the AI-powered contract analysis has been good for, as I mentioned, our executives and using minimal manual effort and saving time. So as part of my renewals, I also optimize our utilization. So if I'm looking at a contract, we're spending $60,000, but we're only using 47% of the plan, then I want to make sure that we're trimming that down consistently. So I try to review quarterly our utilization data for each of our tools to make sure that the plan is being fully utilized. And if not, that can come up in the renewal process and we're able to effectively leverage our needs. Additionally, optimizing those contracts for efficiency, removing auto renewals if you can, removing any other sort of termination clauses or penalties that can occur, whether you have to communicate with a legal team or a compliance team to get that done is something that we've found useful. And then finally, finding those underperforming vendors, the ones that you are dissatisfied with, there are more technical questions popping up. There's a lack of communication if there are security issues, or if you're noticing that there's going to be more technical challenges for your user base. We want to make sure that if that's a tool that's very embedded into the business, that we're not going to blow up the relationship right away. We want to make sure that we're able to calmly and easily work this out through the term period, and then ultimately have a clean break potentially. And then each time I come up during renewal periods and have those discussions, I want to make sure I have comparisons and alternatives. It takes, minimal work. Unfortunately, maybe your personal phone is going to be in a company's log from now on, so you get a few extra marketing contacts each year. But it's very helpful for being able to negotiate whenever you have those paper comparisons and are able to utilize that. But that's a bit of what I wanted to discuss today. I just want to thank you all for your time, and happy to take questions and provide answers.
For Q&A right now, if you'd like to put it into the Q&A button, it helps us to keep it out of the chat so we don't lose them. But one of the first ones came in and said, how did you prioritize which procurement challenges to tackle first?
Yeah, so for us, we wanted to highlight the core of our user base. So our core employees at Emerald in corporate. So we wanted to make sure that those operational details were optimized first and then spreading out to the brands. So whenever we looked at those challenges, we wanted to see, okay, where are the delays occurring? And a lot of the time for us, it was between the security team and the legal team. Utilizing different tools, for example, can cause those delays. So LevelPath being able to use integrations has been particularly helpful. One of the things that Libby and Kevin Sullivan, another solution consultant at Emerald at LevelPath have been helping us for is a integration with Ironclad, which is utilized by our legal team whenever they're going to be reviewing new contracts. So we're looking to push documentation over to them. So my job was to look at those finer detail processes, try to make them easier overall for the corporate employees, and then spread out to our brands.
I got it. So can you see where a document sits then, if it's with legal or if it's with security or something like that? Do you know where it is in the process at all times?
Yes. Yeah. So for our new purchases and renewal workflows at LevelPath, we're able to track that with the approval steps that we're at. So we'll have our security team tab. We'll also have a tab that may be in our CFO's corner. So if we need to ping him and reach him if he's particularly busy and a deal is closing this week, we can do that.
Awesome. Okay. And it said the 60,000 in savings on one contract is impressive. What do you think made that negotiation so successful?
So I attribute that to multiple points. I would say the key part is that that's a vendor that we've had like a 5+ year relationship with. So we've always had solid communication with them, maintained consistent levels of expectations, and they provided us excellent white glove service similar to LevelPath. So we've been able to build a solid relationship with them as one. Two, because we've spent so much consistently with them, we've also built up that financial relationship where they have not a reliance on us, but an appreciation for our business and our account. So then we were able to look at our utilization of this contract, come to them, and based on that prior good relationship, as well as that financial obligation and historic relationship, and leverage savings on that. Additionally, for that contract, there were clauses that I was able to eliminate for the renewal because of level path and being able to sort that after uploading into their tool and the AI analysis that found those documents or found those clauses within the document.
Awesome. And which metric or outcome are you personally most proud of from this project?
So I would say what I'm personally most proud of is the new job workflow. Again, that's not necessarily we're using a procurement platform for a different process, but because of the reach of that across the business, that's what I'm most proud of. It's effectively increased cycle times on our hiring, and it's been utilized for, I think, 60 to 70 employees. So to be able to see that change across the business and go from, a month-long hiring process to 2 because we're able to achieve those approvals faster and create a smoother intake form with questions that are easily answered and reviewed, that's what provides me happiness whenever looking at that.
Interesting. So do you use AI to do any of your supplier questionnaires?
Yeah, so for our supplier questionnaires, we do have some questions that are auto-populated. Yes, and that will provide just a basic set of answers for our vendors.
Perfect. And can you create sourcing events out of level path? And what does the onboarding process look like for suppliers?
Yeah, so the onboarding process has been pretty smooth so far, using level path and different tools. So basically what has happened with our process at onboarding is we have that intake form as well as providing details such as banking and tax documentation. Separately, once that is created, we'll have that ping one of our team members in the accounts payable department, and then they're able to utilize that form, upload the information into our ERP system, and then effectively log all of that very quickly. So it centralizes the onboarding process for us.
Perfect. So I like this next question. Now, last night, I actually had a conversation with the CPO of OpenAI. So we had a very interesting conversation about the use of AI in procurement. But this question says, what advice would you give to companies hesitant to trust AI-driven procurement tools?
I would say that at a certain point, it's an inevitability that you have to embrace. And your competitors are going to be leveraging this every step of the way. They may make mistakes, but it's going to be leveraged either way. So you may as well jump in with a company and a team that you feel like you have some trust in. And we have that full trust in Level Path, and that's why we've utilized them. So it's something that I think needs to be technologically embraced, as well as the fact is that you want to use a company that's not making it their primary selling point, if that makes sense. Because Level Path creates a platform that utilizes AI that's incredibly beneficial, but it's not the AI itself that's driving everything that is in the platform. So that also comes down to their solutions consultants who provide excellent support to our team and customer success, who we've been very happy with. So it's using those automated tools as well as the human piece of the business that have been helpful for us.
So advice to someone else is that you need to embrace it, or that you need to do a proof of concept? How do you make people comfortable in your mind?
I'd say cautiously embrace is how I would say. Making sure whenever you have those early meetings, if you're doing a demo with Level Path, you want to make sure that you're not rocketing forward, and it's the Silicon Valley mantra of move fast, break things. If that's not in your business, you want to make sure that that's very clearly stated while you're going into those discussions. So a cautious embrace is what I would say.
Okay, I like that.
And Dawn, just to add on to that, something that we've seen across our customer base that has helped them is to start small. We don't want to, rock everything all at once. So thinking through what are some of the use cases here and there, whether it's focused on, strategic sourcing, we can incorporate that into just running sourcing events, or, is it the end user experience? So just thinking through, picking one first, starting small, really seeing the value and showing the folks who may be a little more skeptical how it can help them over time, and then kind of work through that journey over time.
Yeah, and I can't agree more that just sometimes just having a very small proof of concept just gives you that little bit of comfort that it's good moving forward. But folks, I will tell you also the founders of Level Path have got such a great reputation, and not only for being ethical and above board, but for just being brilliant. And we know that there's ethics built into their AI. So that's just a personal endorsement that I can give you from hearing from all of our members who have loved the founders through the various companies that they have had. So, question then for you is, can you do an RFP, RFQ workflow?
Yeah. So actually, I'll let Mari handle that one.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we remember from the slide that I showed, the platform today, we have all the applications available, so sourcing being one of them. And we do have some customers who are engaging and putting a workflow on top of that. So it's not just running an RFP, but we actually want to have a process, collaborate with your stakeholders, make sure you're getting all the right questions, working with them up front, and then turning over and facilitating the RFP or RFQ. We want to make it easy to not only do those larger complex RFPs, but also if you just have, 3 quick bids and a buy, you want to just collect some quotes. Similar experience, again, with ease of use in mind and just getting those events out the door, responses back to you more quickly. Last thing I'll mention is we want to make it really easy for your suppliers as well. We know that your vendors are not logging into these tools all the time. So making it really easy for them. We have the multi-factor authentication without having an account, just putting in your email, getting a six-digit code. And so they can come in, see all the information you're requesting and get it back to you. So just trying to facilitate overall a more streamlined process, giving everyone the visibility and traceability of all the information gathered, and making you more efficient every step of the way.
Yeah, perfect. And Zach, what was your implementation timeline to move from your previous platform to Level Path?
Yeah. So we started our contract with Level Path in March of 2024. And throughout that period up till I was hired in July of 2024, we did the basic contract repository storage. Whenever I was brought on, we did a sort of segmented rollout where we implemented Level Path in different aspects of the business. So for corporate, and by the time I was brought on in mid-July of last year, we were able to roll it out to our corporate purchasing in September. That was after having design meetings and discussions and making sure it was rolled out effectively for our user base. And then since then, multiple of our processes typically take no more than 1.5 months, maybe 2, if it's a switch from that, depending on what you're doing with the business. We took a more cautious approach and decided to do that segmentation. So that's what worked for us. It may work better for certain businesses if, there's less movement or less teams that you have to track across.
Perfect. And it says, I work with an Australian company. Where does Level Path store their data?
Great question. Data is stored in the US. We are hosted on AWS, but happy to walk through any more detailed architecture, all of those, behind the scenes things in another conversation for sure.
Perfect. So folks, we're going to send out both the deck and a recording from today. And so when you get that, you'll also have the contact information so you can follow up directly with Mari or Zach. Also, if we don't get to your questions today, we will be following up with our presenters to make sure they're answered. So another one says, in terms of a sourcing event, does the tool allow evaluation to occur within the tool, or is the evaluation done outside the tool?
Ooh, that is a great question. You're going to hear me say this a lot. We want to meet users where they're at. And so oftentimes we are working with customers who have their evaluation and scorecard templates in Excel. And that's something that has been developed over time. And rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and make sure you are building all of that in Level Path, we can actually just utilize your Excel that you already are comfortable with. And we harness the power of AI by being able to upload that really simply into the sourcing event, and then being able to utilize the analysis side to help you with that decision-making framework. Now, I will say, I know I mentioned this, we have started in 2022 and we have not stopped developing more and more features. So that is something we want to have in the tool, but it certainly isn't stopping anyone from having those evaluations in Level Path today.
Perfect. All right. I love this one, Zach. How have the stakeholder attitudes towards procurement changed since the transformation?
Great question.
I would say that, yeah, generally we have a much more satisfied user base for a lot of our users now. So again, the gaps in communication were the biggest thing that held up different renewals or purchases and delayed things. So now that we're able to track the approvals, we're able to have updates to the quotes that we're utilizing within the process, and we're able to effectively leverage those communication logs. Everything is moving incredibly quickly, and more so than if we were previously using, say, just communication by Outlook to provide updates on where a contract was at. Now our teams like legal and security feel that they have a better handle on the process overall because their queues are more centralized within Level Path for those different approval processes that they need to complete and review. And overall, stakeholders are quite pleased.
Good. That's what we want to hear. And we want to hear that we're getting rid of the roadblocks for them and not seeing those impeding their progress.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that is the last question. So that's all I have in queue right now. But thank you. I just want to thank you for just a fantastic, and Zach, you did such a good job just walking us through it. Yeah, I agree. Applause to you. You made it logical. It was easy to follow, and I can tell that you just love the tool. So that also showed. So it was great. And Mari, thank you so much for bringing us Zach and for just being with Level Path and bringing us today's webinar.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you on our Power Hour webinar again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.